good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Dan Clemens Show, a Christian political talk show. This is, I was going to say your episode, but I got to tell you now, so I'm going to quit doing that. I'm your host, Dan Clemens, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is July 18th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful, sunny Central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And if you were following me on YouTube, I do apologize for that. I'm, for some reason, hang on a second, I'm going to try to do this again. I was using a pop-out to do so I could do the chat on both rooms. And hopefully that wasn't what was hosing me up. I'm really hoping that wasn't. Hang on a second, I get that set up. Let me go over to Blog Talk Radio. Everything looks good over there. I got to relaunch the chat. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, I'm live chatting here on Blog Talk Radio and also over at the live chat at the DanClemensShow.com, or not DanClemensShow.com, but Dan Clemens Show over on YouTube. I will not have time to put the URLs back up again. I do apologize for that. Looks like all the streaming is actually working good now. So we're up and running. For some reason, my Firefox decided it was going to take a break. And when it got hosed up, it hosed everything up, and that was on my main computer. That's the first time that's happened in a long, long time. We'll have to check that out and see what's going on with that. Episode numbers. I will tell you what the episode numbers are in the show notes page over at the DanClemensShow.com. They'll be right below, Dan Clemens Constitutional Warrior with the date, and they'll be just above or right in the title, or just above the content, not the title, but the content of the show notes and my little blurb that I'm actually putting out. And the reason why I'm doing that is I need to get out of the habit of posting my episodes up on for like YouTube videos and also for my Blog Talk Radio, because I found out I've been going back to school a little bit on SEOs, and that's search engine optimization, how Google and these other search engines work. And here I was looking back at some of these titles that I've actually titled the show, and they weren't popping up anywhere. I was like on the third or fourth page before I saw anything that resembled my episodes. And here to come find out, now if I put in episode, whatever, 834, then all sorts of episodes would pop up, so people weren't actually getting to my shows. And so I've been learning about search engine optimization. So from now on, when you see the episodes on Blog Talk Radio or over on YouTube, they will no longer have an episode number in it. I think that was more of a vanity thing for me. I'm up to 844 episodes. And I might still be saying that, in my intro, but I'm going to try to even get away from that. And basically, you just write down the date of the show, which today is the July 18th. And you can search on the DanClemensShow.com. You can search it by the date and the title of the show. So I will be, I have been this week. I've been a good boy this week, where I'm getting everything done that I need to do before I quit in the afternoon. I haven't been getting that tired in the afternoon for my fibromyalgia, and that's a good thing. So without further ado, and I will be, folks over on YouTube, I will be going in and editing this over on YouTube to get that first trailer out. And of course, over on Blog Talk Radio, you'll get your full hour. I'm recording the audio. I'll upload the full hour without all this the glitches in it for you. So I do apologize. One other note here, and maybe I shouldn't mention this because then things will go awry. But if you noticed, I haven't been blanking out on my streaming computer. And I might have mentioned this the other day, and if I didn't, I just want to mention the folks that might be wanting to do what I'm doing and trying to understand what I'm doing here as far as my computers, because there's not a whole lot of information out there on the internet for this. My streaming computer used to be a Linux operating system, Mint, very good system. And I downloaded everything I needed to hook into my home group on the network that I set up with my main computer. Wasn't having none of it, and that's what my problem was. It was actually not hooking up to my home group, and then it was timing out on me on my my Mono Tiny server that's on my production computer, which actually does an RTMP link. And I know I'm talking above some people, but people who've been researching this understand that. If you have any more questions about it, I'll be glad to talk to you about it, email, things like that. Go over to danclemisshow.com and click on the contact page and shoot me an email. I'll send you pictures, tell you everything I've been doing here. And so far, and I've actually let this twice now, I've let the feed go from my production computer over my home network to the streaming computer without streaming to the net and the internet. And I've had it up for 7-8 hours. So it's actually working pretty good. At least somebody's watching my shows, right? My buddy Dave from Tennessee, he puts up in there, sorry I'm late, but I had borrowed my buddy's YouTube password to listen to your password sharing is stealing video. That's only if it's a paid service, Dave. And that's where that video was at yesterday, was for a paid service. Today's show is being brought to you by one of my affiliate marketers, Sears Parts Direct. Now, if you're the handyman around the house, if you do the fixing up, whether it's appliances, whether it's your lawn equipment, whatever it might be, along those lines, lawn equipment, power equipment like that, and you need a part, and maybe you looked locally and can't find it, or maybe you don't have time to look locally, and you get on your smartphone or your work computer like some folks do, and look up Sears Part Direct. And you can do that real easily by going to the danclemisshow.com and clicking on my widget. Now, by clicking on that widget, you're helping support the show because it is an affiliate marketer. And if you go over and use the widget, you'll see the offer code for 10% off your parts for lawn equipment, appliances, and more. And that offer code is 90055. So keep your honey happy and keep your honey-do list short, or at least smaller than what it used to be. If you need a part, go to danclemisshow.com and click on the Sears Part Direct widget, and you'll be amazed at the quality of parts and the timeliness they'll get them to you. Okay. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 47 through 51. John, chapter 6, verses 47 through 51. Most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me has everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever, and the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. So Jesus is our bread of life. And that's, honestly, the Gospel of John is one of my favorite. Out of the four, I would have to pick John as my favorite, although, you know, whether you're allowed to do that or not. Am I allowed to do that, Dave? Have a favorite gospel, but the Gospel of John is one of my favorite ones anyway. So even if I'm not allowed to do it, tough. All right, today's quote meal comes from Pete Welch. I like this one. Truth is not a virtue unless it's given with love. There's a lot of wisdom to that, because there's a lot of truth being put forth today that's being done in hate, or it's hateful the way it's actually delivered to folks. And truth is not a virtue unless it's given in love. Today's short Bible lessons is this is going to be a series of lessons starting today and going through the end of the week. It's this one today, and they're all by Mike Riley over at gewatkins.net, and he's talking about the new hermeneutics. Hermeneutic versus the new versus the old, and he explains what hermeneutics actually is, and he explains what the new hermeneutics, I'll get that out here in a second, what it is and why it's wrong. And then the next 3 days, Mike Riley is going to go over biblical interpretation. It's a 3-part, and it's rules of interpretation is what it is. So I'll be sharing those. You know, those links and the rules of interpretation, I'll actually go down through and just hit the bullet points for you in each one to sort of whet your appetite for that daily Bible lesson. And I think this is very good, because you hear me talk about hermeneutics, and hermeneutics just doesn't apply to the Bible. It applies to any document or historical or whatever, current events. It applies to that so you can have a better understanding of what's going on. And I honestly, I don't think they teach that in Journalism 101 anymore. I really don't, because if they did, we wouldn't have all this fake and fabricated news going on around us, because it just wouldn't happen if they were following proper hermeneutics. Even when it doesn't even actually have to apply just to the written word. It can apply to what you see, a story that's unfolding, things like that, that you can apply these hermeneutics to. And, this is one of those things I wish we could actually do a seminar on, and maybe we can in the future. Maybe we can do a webinar and get some folks invited, maybe like Mike Riley and some other ones, to have this webinar on how to do proper hermeneutics. And like I said, it doesn't just apply to the Bible. Now, I titled the show today, Truth, Justice, Economics in the American Way. And I don't do that I try not to make clickbait headlines, because those bother me, because they're making those headlines to sensationalize them so you can click on them and then watch the story. The new news network, or the new news network, whichever it is, on YouTube, does this quite a bit, and I quit watching them because every title they have is clickbait, and you go in and look at that, and it really, the title was misleading, and I don't like that. And I even told him, I said, I don't like your titles or clickbait. You're a good journalist, or you seem to be a good guy. Just make a common sense title for your show, and people will come over there. Because I imagine I'm not the only one out there that doesn't like clickbait titles. So I try not to make clickbait titles. But I added, most people say truth, justice, and the American way, and they think about Uncle Sam or Superman or something like that, some superhero. Captain America maybe. But I slipped that word economics in there, and there's a reason why I did that, and it has to do with in modern times here, it has to do with our misunderstanding of economics throughout our lives, not only in our personal lives but in our business lives. And I've shared that with you on this net neutrality, what we've been talking about, net neutrality, where these literally YouTube millionaires out there who built their brand, have a small company, have employees working for them, and are doing things economically correct for their business, but then they don't extend that ideology out past their business. They go out into society and they think there's a different set of economic rules that should apply to society. And that's, I guess I could say, therein lies the problem, especially with modern day economics, or the lack of economics. A lot of people instinctually know how to, if they have an entrepreneurial mindset, they instinctively know, and they actually go out and learn things, just like I've been learning about search engine optimization. That's why I'm not putting, when you see them on YouTube now or Blog Talk Radio, they will no longer have episode whatever before the title. It's just going to be the straight title, so those key words in that title can actually be found, and it'll actually, rank higher on Google and other search engines, which will, get me more traffic to my website. And it's not like I'm trying to sell anything. I'm not one of these websites that markets everything that comes down the road. I'd love to have advertisers. I have affiliate advertisers right now, which is the simplest form of advertising on the show. But anyway, getting back to my point about economics, I try to do things that make sense economically for me in this show, and trying to grow the show. And that common sense should dictate to you that those actually, you should extrapolate those out into society. But for whatever reason, we don't. What we do in our personal lives, economically, we don't think about as a society, saying, well, these rules should apply out in society too, because if they don't, then me as an entrepreneur with my business can get hurt financially, can get hurt. And this is one of those things with net neutrality, and I've been explaining, and I've actually had some good comments back on some comments I left on other videos and videos I actually did. Some people actually, a gentleman on VidMe actually thanked me. He says, you actually explain net neutrality better than anybody I've ever seen. And there's too many people out there that get out in the weeds when it comes to net neutrality, and the only thing you need to know about net neutrality is it is the heavy-handed government regulating an industry it has no business regulating, constitutionally speaking. And I get in a lot of trouble saying that too. Well, who's supposed to regulate it? Well, not the government. Now, if the states want to try to regulate it, that's fine, but I don't even think they could. I don't even think they should be regulating it. It should be a free market thing, just like healthcare is a free market thing. And this all comes back into economics. Case in point, my Facebook nemesis, Kim Eaton, posted something about, you know, all this person's not going to have health care now if they repeal and replace, if we're under the American whatever, the Obama, Obama, or not Obamacare, Trump care, Riley care, you know, or Ryan care, whatever you want to call it. And I explained to her, I said, look, I said, because I finally started getting my unemployment compensation due to my medical condition for the next 6 months. You know, I got 26 weeks of it. I said, that put me up over the limit for having Pennsylvania-based health insurance, which was through the local medical center, Geisinger Medical, just up the road here. And I checked on some personal plans, which I'm not eligible for. Because I do have some pre-existing conditions. Now, these are plans that are under Obamacare, because and these, you know, they're not supposed to go by pre-existing conditions. But the one plan that I could get, one plan here in Pennsylvania, because I have pre-existing conditions, was going to cost me almost $950 a month. It was a family plan for $950 a month, and I'm the only one that has pre-existing conditions. And even if I just went by myself, it still cost me over $700 a month for the pre-existing condition plan. It has a $6,000 deductible per individual, so as a family plan, it's $12,000. Plus, I'm paying this monthly premium, and the insurance doesn't cover anything. Doesn't cover prescriptions, doesn't cover hospital stays or anything until we reach our $12,000 deductible. Then it starts kicking in. Now, economically, does that make sense? For me, does that make sense for me to go on this plan, spend that much money a month, which I really don't have, and not have any insurance coverage until I get up to and meet my deductible, including my prescriptions? And that was the huge changer in Obamacare that people don't realize, especially if you're on the healthcare exchange. It used to be when you had group insurance or individual insurance, you had a prescription writer that came along with it that was separate, and it wasn't included in your having to meet your deductible, but the money you spent on your prescriptions, and usually it was a copay, would go towards your deductible. But see, Obamacare took away all that, and I told her, I said right now I got to go without insurance until they do something. You know, they want to, the latest I heard today was they're talking about just doing a straight repeal, which they have the votes for. If Mitch McConnell brought that up today for a vote, they would have the votes to do a straight repeal of Obamacare, and then they were going to have a 2-year hiatus, I guess, or 2-year implementation, and give them more time to do their replacement bill. And I've said this all along. I said if they get the repeal in and get Obamacare out of the way and do something that Rand Paul, and I think they're going to have to put this rider in, get rid of the portability laws. That means you can buy insurance across state lines. Then the healthcare markets will, as far as the insurance markets, then you're going to start seeing them grow again. You're going to start seeing prices and premiums come down. You're going to start seeing coverages go up. Right now, I can't even get a medical savings account in Pennsylvania, an individual medical savings account, because of Obamacare. And that irks me to no end. And the biggest thing that makes me mad is that every single American was forced onto this plan, whether they wanted it or not. Whether they wanted it or not, we were forced on this plan. And folks, that's anti-freedom. If you don't want something, you shouldn't be forced to buy it, period. Health insurance. You're not forced to buy certain cars. You're not forced when you go in the grocery store that these are the only brands you're allowed to buy. We have all these other choices in life, in our groceries, the homes we buy, how we furnish our homes, decorate our homes, what we're going to do with our yards if we have a yard, what food we're going to eat, what restaurants we're going to go eat. what movie theaters we're going to go to, all these choices we have in life, economic choices. And one of the most important economic choices we have in life has been taken away from us. It's absolutely been taken away from us. And this is a problem. And this is the hardest thing to get people to understand and see, because they do not have a basic understanding of economics. They don't have a basic understanding of what justice is. They don't have a basic understanding of what truth is. And that's sad. And a lot of this is because the education system has been taken over by ethical humanists, and they go around with their ideas that there is no, morality is subjective. It's not, to them, morality is not objective. Morality to them is subjective. And when you have subjective morality, you have no morality. I'm sorry to tell you that. If anything you think about is subjective, then there is no standard for that. There is no standard. Now, some things, like I said, the paint I'm going to paint on the walls in the studio, that's very subjective. That's not an objective standard unless you're dealing with my wife. Then she has some pretty strong opinions about what colors, because I don't have that eye for fashion or whatever it is. I just don't. And the one thing we're talking about doing is darkening up the wall behind me. Now, I doubt we're going to go away from the earth tones, but we might put a darker, like a light brown or a coffee brown or something on that wall back there, just to break up the color so it's not so light in here, and it just, I think it'll be better. But that's very subjective, and I hope you understand that when I'm telling you that that's a subjective decision. But when it comes to, and again, when it comes to all of our choices, it's subjective. However, when you're forced to buy something that you may not want, and there's a lot of people out there, folks, a lot of young folks that were forced onto the Obamacare health exchanges for one reason and one reason only. They wanted their monthly premiums to come in so that would offset the expenses of the older folks that were on the exchanges. But the one thing that they did, and I'm going to use a name here, folks. I don't normally call names, but these boneheads that came up with this put one provision or one proviso in Obamacare, and that is that you didn't have to buy insurance until you were sick. So it was like, but if you didn't have insurance, then you had this $2,000 whatever, they call it a tax, but it's actually a penalty at the end of the year. And I don't know if, honestly, I just don't know the mindset of the younger people, how they felt about this whole thing, and if they actually paid that off or they just ignored it. And there's a lot of uncollected fines out there right now. I haven't dug into that, and it's not really interesting to me, other than they were forced to buy it. Now, here in Pennsylvania, I am for it. Like I said, there's only one health care plan that I could buy that covers my pre-existing conditions as an individual, right? And it follows the Obamacare guidelines, but it is super, super expensive. Now, it's not on the healthcare exchanges, but it's only one. It's like $900 something for the family, $700 something for the individual. And I went over on the healthcare exchanges, and the prices weren't much different over there for a family or an individual. They were just different ways they would do it. Now, if I was going to buy one or the other, I definitely would not buy it on the healthcare market. I would actually buy it over on this one insurance company, Health Independent or something like that. It sells here in Pennsylvania, and but they still had high deductibles, although they had the prescription plan that wasn't tied in with the deductibles, like I said earlier. But I can't, even the single policy, I can't afford that. And so I'm hoping against hope and praying that they repeal Obamacare, because once it's repealed, the states, because once they put the repeal in, they can't just, we're going to repeal it and then back this down over the next 2 years. That's not going to work, because then people are going to be in limbo for two years. That's just not going to work. They're going to have to outright repeal it, and then it goes back to the states. I've said this all along. It goes back to the states and their policies, And in Pennsylvania, they have laws about pre-existing conditions. You can get the policy at maybe a little bit higher. You don't have to be put in this risk pool, but they won't pay for any expenses due to that pre-existing condition for like 6 months or a year. I think in Pennsylvania it's 6 months. And that's happened even in some of the older group insurance that I was in before they passed a new law about group insurance and pre-existing conditions. That used to be I had to wait 6 months before they pay anything on my diabetes, and that was fine. And it amazes me how people just in their own lives, they'll use Austrian economic principles throughout their own lives. But beyond their house walls or beyond their family, they don't extend that into the community, the state, or the federal government. And it makes a big mess. Now, wait a minute, Dave. Them are fighting words. Dave said, I think your Ohio State clothing proves your lack of fashion sense. Perhaps a nice UT orange. I'll tell you what, Dave. Not that I want you to spend money on me, but if you send me up a 3 extra large UT orange jersey, I will wear it. I will wear it on the show. I promise, cross my heart, poke me in the eye, or however that goes. But just know that to the core, I'm a Ohio State fan. But for other listeners of the show, I will wear their favorite college, not professional, but their favorite college team, because I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, and I'm not putting on any other. I'm not putting on any Titans, Cowboys, Eagles, nothing. I'm through the bone Green Bay, and I'm not going to change that. But college football, that's a little different story. I would wear that. Not, like I said, not that you have to spend money on me, but I would wear that on the show just for Dave. Now, one of the things I put in the show notes description, you'll see down in YouTube and also on Blog Talk Radio. We know about, I just want to read this because not that it's profound or anything, but it actually sums up my thoughts and ideas about this whole subject. For far too long, we've been having a conversation in America that focuses on issues that in the grand scheme of things gets us nowhere. Folks are out there dividing America on matters of personal subjective opinion. More times than not, that opinion is not rooted in truth or facts, and this problem is tearing America apart. In order for each of us to have justice, there must always be truth. The truth about any matter is of utmost importance. Without truth, there can be no justice, freedom, or liberty by law. Justice is earned by the pursuit of truth. Freedom is secured by the proclamation of truth, and liberty by law can only work when we employ the truth. And you might be asking why I included economics in the title of this episode. Only by being just ourselves can we deal freely and fairly with other folks. Only by protecting our freedoms and those of fellow citizens can we enjoy the economic contracts we entered into with each other. And finally, having our liberties protected by law, we can have a free and prosperous America that all, if they choose to, can enjoy. And again, it's a choice. And I unpacked a lot of stuff there, but this is my thoughts on these subjects, on justice and truth. And I had to throw economics in there because it's something, just like politics sort of permeates throughout most of our lives, our daily lives, so does economics. We just don't think about it in those terms, and people really need to start thinking about that. And it's a really good thought exercise, folks. You go, next time you go to the grocery store, and if you're a guy and you don't go grocery shopping, shame on you. Your wife needs help every now and then grocery shopping, and you should know the layout of the grocery store when she sends you there to find what you need to find. And I do. I help my wife grocery shop, and I know where things are in our local store, our big store that we're, Wise Markets is what it is. Our Aldi store that we go to is under renovation right now. Hopefully the next week or two that'll be up and running again. I knew where everything was in there. But look at, especially not so much at Aldi's, but in the main, your big chains, whatever, I don't even know what they are down around Nashville. I don't know if you got Winn-Dixie down there or what your main grocery store chain is down in the Nashville area, but go to your major chain, more than just a couple stores. It has to be maybe not statewide, but, that would help. And go and look at, just go down the canned goods aisle and see where the name brands are. what shelf the name brands are on. Go to the cake aisle, see what shelf the name brands are, and see what shelf the store brands are. I get, and we buy a lot of store brands, folks, and I get a lot of exercise on my core and my midsection by bending down there and getting the store brands, because they're usually on the bottom. But take a look at that and see where the name brands are at. They're either at eye level or above or just below eye level. And you pay for that. If you buy those, you pay for that, because they actually, the grocery store charges more for that product placement there. And that's an economic choice. And you have an economic choice whether you're going to pay for that premium there, or you're just going to go for the low-hanging fruit, as it were. And again, with everything else in our lives, it just amazes me how people don't have a basic understanding of economics. Now, I have here in my show notes page today how the repeal and replacement of Affordable Care Act would affect your state, and this is by Commonwealth Fund. I found this. I was watching a video this morning, and they basically they're like the Kaiser Foundation. They do a lot of research and work on insurance things. And I got to get over and get that open. They do a lot of insurance work as far as studies and all these things. But the one thing I think they're totally lacking in these studies, when they're talking about, they project out to 2022, 2026, and the thing that they're totally lacking is if they get rid of Obamacare. And let's say right now, I think the actual repeal of Obamacare is more likely now than it ever has been, because of the impasse in the Senate, and they just want to get rid of Obamacare. And if they don't do that, let me tell you this right now: if the Republicans do not at least repeal Obamacare before the midterm elections next year, they're going to lose big, and they're going to lose big time, because that was a major component of the Republicans winning this last round. The presidency and everything. I'm getting over in here. Pennsylvania, and I'm going to pick on Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania proposal would replace the Affordable Care Act for your states. And how would this work, or how would this affect people? Well, they're claiming that 1.2 million people or more people would become uninsured in Pennsylvania by 2022. And this is under the new Affordable Care Act, which, again, I go back to the basic premise of the Constitution. They have no constitutional authority to be doing this. They need to just repeal health care at the government level through the Commerce Clause, allow people, tell the states it cannot stop people from buying insurance policies across state lines. Therefore, people could join groups and associations, get a group rate, boom, there you'd have it. Maybe I could join a Podcasters of America Association or something like that and get cheaper insurance through them if we didn't have the portability laws and if Obamacare wasn't there. And in group rates, group plans, pre-existing conditions are negotiated in group plans. And the thing about group plans that people don't understand here is that they're got in numbers they can negotiate. If they got 10,000, 20,000 people, that's a negotiating block that they can negotiate for better things with the health insurance companies. And if they don't like this health insurance company, they go to this one. Matter of fact, we used to do this, and I helped a couple times when I was at Metropolitan Trucking over in Bloomsburg. I was in on helping sort through some of the insurance issues with the drivers. And we would put out bids for health insurance, and we would go over those bids. Usually it was 3, maybe 4 health insurance providers that we put bids out to. And that's how that worked. But the problem with all these numbers from the Commonwealth Foundation here, as I read through these, it's if everything is static. And this is the mindset in Congress. So they get rid of one thing. If they get rid of government control, nothing else will take its place. Net neutrality. If we get rid of net neutrality, and I'm telling you what, folks, after seeing some of the stuff I've seen with Commissioner Pye and some of the responses, the nonsense responses that the people really didn't know what they were talking about when it comes to net neutrality and why they even wanted it, I think net neutrality is gone. And then the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, was the one that was adjudicating all the issues that a lot of these guys that were for net neutrality saying that, oh, we got this laundry list of issues, and mainly they were state issues that were dealing with the last mile ISPs, would take care of that. So they think if they get rid of government regulation, that that nothing's going to take its place. And the CBO does this because the CBO still use Keynesian theories of economics, which have been totally debunked for years and don't work. The Kaiser Foundation, I don't know precisely, but from just reading everything that they have here in the, not the Kaiser, but the Commonwealth Foundation, everything I've read in there, it seems like they still use that same Keynesian model where the government is the spender of last resort. And the problem with that is people get the idea that if the government gets out of the way, then things are going to fall apart because nothing's going to take its place. And the problem with that is they don't understand the free markets. And that's where that's why I put economics in there. They don't understand the free markets. They actually use the free markets every day of their lives. For every economic decision you make. And that means every time you open up your wallet, you write a check, or you do an electronics funds transfer at the bank, you are making an economic decision for your family. If you bought a house and you're making a house payment, that house payment you're making every month is due to an economic decision you made to buy that house. If you have a car payment, same thing. If you go out and buy groceries, you decide how much you're going to spend and what you're going to spend it on. That's an economic decision that you're not forced into doing, that you make on your own. You don't go to the grocery store and get some government bureaucrat saying you can have this, but you can't have that. You can buy this brand, but you can't buy that brand. And for whatever reason, they get this in their minds that if the government isn't doing it, it isn't going to get done. And that is the biggest, I guess, lie. Let me get over here. Now, where did it go? How the repeal, I got to go back over my folder. How the repeal, maybe I didn't get to it. You know what? I might have snuck into another one. But anyway, you can go on this website, and I got it up on the show notes page there, and you can check out your state, how many people in your state are going to lose their their health insurance. And let me do this real quick here. I can pop this up on. Hopefully we don't hose up my Firefox this time. How the repeal and replacement of the Affordable Care Act would affect your state. Now, since Dave's on the line, he's sitting there. I'm gonna quick go on there and check Tennessee out. Now, Tennessee said if Trump Care would come into being, that there would be these adults will be under 65 years of age, uninsured adults. 353,000 people in Tennessee will not have health insurance. And again, the government stopped. There's nothing beyond government, and that's the mindset of America. The anti-freedom folks out there have done a really, really good job of putting this into the American minds that the government's the end all to be all to our existence, and that should have never came into the American consciousness or psyche or whatever you want to call it. That the government does everything that they're supposed to do, and they are taking care of us. They're taking care of us. So I'm going to get out of that unless I'm going to stop my YouTube feed over there too, as far as my preview. But anyway, so they're very static. They don't take into consideration the free markets. And they don't take in consideration that you're very capable of going out and buying your own health insurance if you so choose. And like I said, if I had my druthers, when we get Obamacare out of the way and get the state laws back, the state laws come up under state law, I can buy an MSA. So I'm definitely going to get into an MSA. I know it's a little late in life, but you know, they keep shoving the retirement age up. So I got at least 12 years in MSA to put money back, which part of that is your premiums that you pay. So that there, the MSAs, is another idea, and I don't have anything in here about this, but I've been reading up on this. There's some right-thinking economists out there that actually put pen to paper and said it would be cheaper. Everybody on welfare that's getting health insurance through Medicaid, it would be cheaper for the federal government, and even if the federal government did it, it would be cheaper for each state to actually open up an MSA account, a medical savings account for the individual, and then they can go out and get a primary health provider, and then they have the choice on how much money they're going to spend on health care. Now that's non-transferable, that's very regulated as far as that goes, but it's another cost savings that if you're going to help the poor, and there are people out there that just cannot help themselves, a medical savings account actually makes better sense than just throwing this money away on a bureaucracy. And that's all this is. They take money from us, the taxpayers, they block grant it back to the states from the federal government, but the federal government has to take their VIG, or their cut of that, to support the bureaucracy, and then it comes to the state, and then there's a layer at the state of bureaucracy, and then it goes down, and they actually pay out to the providers. So the government is the insurance provider in Medicaid. And if you want to go look at some corruption, that is one of the most corrupt programs we have in the United States. All right, I have an article here. Let me just go down through and see what we got going on here. It says I only have 10 minutes, but I am going to be going over on Blog Talk Radio. So if you're still listening on Blog Talk Radio, I believe you'll be able to still hear that as long as you're logged in. Oh, there's a poll out, and you know I don't like polls, but this one was very interesting. 52% of Americans think Democrat Party just stands against Trump. And the only reason I said my comment about the poll, and this comes from Amber Authy over at Daily Caller, and she posted this yesterday. I think maybe that number is a little on the low side. 52% of Americans think the Democrat Party just stands against Trump. And quite honestly, if you see everything that I see, being the politico that I am, I would say I think that number is probably a little bit higher, and some people just don't want to admit it. Well, we're not just against Trump. We're against any of the Republicans' policies. And, you know, those type of Democrats out there, the low information, they don't think about what they're doing or voting. Yeah, Dave put a comment in here, you know, that I've been talking about here. The idea that the government was created to protect the little people from the wealthy bullies, and this is the mindset of a lot of people who support net neutrality, who support the government-run and controlled health care. They have this idea that that's what the government's created for, and it wasn't. The government was created solely to protect our freedoms and liberties. And if I want to contract with Dave for something, let's say Dave's a healthcare provider, and he says, Dan, I'm gonna cover your diabetes, I'm gonna cover your fibromyalgia, and you know that's it. And then let's say that's the policy I want. That's the only things I want covered on, and he sells it to me. I sign it. That's a contract. And if he doesn't live up to his contract, then I should be able to take him to court and sue him over that. And that's what the government's for. Now, if I want more than what he's actually giving me, but I'm not willing to pay more for it, then I'm in breach of contract, especially if I try to force him to give that to me. And that's part of what the government's there for, is to protect contract law, that we have free association. We can make these contracts between each other. This goes into states' licensing issues, where somebody that braids hair, okay, somebody that braids somebody's hair, they got to go to the state, to the beauty schools, pay all this hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get a license to braid people's hair. And if you go to a lot of these beauty schools, they don't teach that. They don't teach that at all. Dave's getting very active in the comments in here. So, you know, it's a freedom thing here. Well, Dave was. I'm gonna go down. I love reading Dave's comments because they usually fit really well in the show. He says, "I text this to you right before the show when your kids were little. Do you remember them looking back at you whenever they tried something new to see if you were watching and approving?" Yeah, sometimes it was. We didn't find out till after the crying was over, if you know what I mean. And I was that same way with my mom and dad. They didn't know everything I did, and I wasn't always looking over my shoulder to get their approval. I just wasn't. Especially when they were doing something they knew was wrong. They never took their eyes off you. Congress is like that now. And you know what? And there was a lot of times when I was a kid, I was doing something wrong, my folks weren't around. But when they found out later, I got in trouble. And not that I always looked over my shoulder, but, you know, I have to tweak that just a little bit from my experience, Dave. I didn't always look over my shoulder for my parents' approval when I did stuff. Especially my dad. My dad was, and this, I love my dad to death, but my dad was this way. You know, the old joke about, you know, Jeff Foxworthy was talking about, you know, having the TV on having a huge TV on a small metal TV tray stand, you know, to eat on. And, you know, today that's child abuse. But back then that was teaching a child a lesson if he pulled the TV down on us. My big thing was when I was little, 4 or 5 years old, I liked to stick things into the electrical sockets. I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what they did. And Mom would yell at us, and Dad would tell her to pipe down that I would learn my lesson. Sure enough, I learned my lesson. Didn't kill me, but I did learn my lesson. So there's instances I didn't look over my shoulder and want my parents' approval. They don't know right from wrong, so they slowly try moving towards something and wait for the polls to tell them if it's right. Now that comes clear back from the Bill and Hillary Clinton era when he was president back in the early 90s, or mid to late 90s, I should say. That's why the Drudge Report headline reads, "Most unproductive Congress in 164 years. They don't know what they stand for anymore." And quite frankly, and this is another issue I have with folks who like government regulation, that they think Congress has to be doing something all the time, has to be passing regulations and laws and doing this and doing that all the time. And we've gotten so used to that mindset that we don't understand that's not how our country was founded. We were not founded on a Congress that was going to go there and lay down the law to its citizens. That was not the original intent. The original intent was to have a citizen legislature that was going there to take care of issues that were enumerated in the Constitution and nothing else, and go home. But politicians got the idea that the more that they help people unconstitutionally, the more they're inclined to vote for them, which keeps them in power, which then they can garner more power by staying in power for years and years and years. It's a sick system that's been set up here in the United States, and we need to get back to the citizen legislature and not listen. This is an important point, folks. Not listen to the naysayers that are the politicians, because they're not going to tell you the truth, because they want to stay in power. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them want to stay in power. They love the thought of having power and garnering more power. So they're the last person you need to ask their opinion of, because they're going to tell you what they want you to hear, or what you want to hear, those type of things. And Dave's right. There's a lot of politicians that don't know what they stand for anymore. I'm an American conservative, and a lot of people call themselves libertarian. I do have libertarian leanings, but I can't go all that way, because I do believe the government does have a role in our lives. But it has to be a very small, minuscule role, because I think we're adult enough to make our own decisions and to make our own, to fail if we want, or to succeed if we want. And we should take responsibility for both of those. And the government trying to make a level playing field for everybody, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you, because then they're picking winners and losers. And that's exactly, hate having to go back to net neutrality, and I hate having to use health care, but that's exactly what will happen. If we went the road that the anti-freedom Democrats want us to go down, we would be heading, especially if Hillary Clinton would have won the presidency, we would be heading for single payer right now. We'd absolutely be heading for single payer, and the government would be not only the payer of the insurance, but actually the administrator of the health care insurance. And if there was a certain sector of that health care insurance, you know, that people were like hogging up, as it were. Not saying, I'm not using that in a negative tone or negative aspects, but they were using up more of it than anybody else, and they couldn't provide that services. Guess what? Then they'd start going through and weeding out the herd. Well, we can't give this to everybody, so then we have to figure out who we can and who we can't give it to. So the government would be picking winners and losers in life as far as health care. And this is another aspect that the anti-freedom folks cannot see, because actually, and I think Dave brings up a good point, they don't know what they stand for anymore. The anti-freedom crowd out there really doesn't have core principles. They have narratives that they live by, and it's not just one narrative. It's whatever the issue is, they have a specific narrative for that issue, whatever the issue is, and they will not budge from that narrative. They will not back down from that narrative, no matter how much proof or truth you have, because they're sold on to that. Now, I'm not saying that every single person that lives that way will not come off of that narrative. I mean, there's a he's a gay liberal, but he's more libertarian now. It's called the Rubin Report on YouTube. He does a lot of interviews. He doesn't push his agenda. He doesn't push his gay agenda or anything like that. And I'd actually say he's actually more of a conservative than liberal. Of course, he takes umbrage to that because he still says he's a liberal, even though a lot of folks that used to follow him years ago that are still liberal call him all sorts of names, you know, just about every name in the book. But anti-freedom folks do not know what they stand for. They don't understand what they stand for. They hear something that sounds good. They're told an end game like, you know, Trump's bad, we need to hate him, we need to get him out of there. That narrative, you know, that they follow. Healthcare, government has to control healthcare, or the big providers are going to put you on death panels, and you're not going to get your insurance. Okay, so that narrative's put out there. Net neutrality. You need the hand of government in net neutrality to make it fair for everybody. And so they have that narrative in their mind, but they really don't understand it. They say they understand net neutrality. They say they understand the health insurance. They say they understand these other issues, these other economic and political issues, but they really don't. They have a superficial knowledge. You know, and I believe the Bible says something about that, doesn't it, Dave? About, you know, these people that just have this knowledge, but they never come to an understanding. They just never come to an understanding. And there's a lot of Christians out there the same way. They have a superficial knowledge of what the Scriptures are, but they never come to an understanding of what the Scriptures are trying to tell them, and how, you know, and what you know, tell them about their relationship with Christ and God. They never ever get to that understanding. And there's people in the Church of Christ today that are like that. And I'm sorry to say that. But we have way too many people in society that actually look at that, and they just don't have that understanding. And then when somebody comes along that has a little bit deeper understanding of the issues and tries to simplify things down, it doesn't follow their narrative. It's just like this article here I want to get to about He Fights. And I thought this was pretty insightful. This is by Evan Sayed over at townhall.com. He Fights. He talks about in this article, my leftist friends, as well as many ardent never-Trumpers, consistently ask me if I'm not bothered by Donald Trump's lack of decorum. They ask if I don't think his tweets are beneath the dignity of the office. Here's my answer. We right-thinking people have tried dignity. There could not have been a man more quiet dignity than George W. Bush, as he suffered the outrageous lies and politically motivated hatreds that undermined his presidency. We tried statesmanship. Could there be another human being on earth that was so desperately prized collegiately as John McCain? I have a different opinion about John McCain, but it's his article. I'll let him say what he wants to say. We tried propriety. Has there ever been a nicer human being ever than Mitt Romney? And the results were always the same. This is because while we were playing by the rules of dignity collegially, and I messed that word up again. Being collegial and proprietary as far as our demeanor and everything like, the left has been for the past 60 years engaged in a knife fight where the only rules for are those of Saul Alinsky and the Chicago mob. And he goes on and talks about this, and he's talking about Donald Trump. And this is something I've always thought in the back of my mind. The reason why most never-Trumpers don't like him, and especially the anti-freedom lamestream media doesn't like him, excuse me, is because he's not playing by the rules. He's like, one of my favorite movies, The Untouchables, was Sean Connery and Kevin Costner. And they were in this Catholic church, I believe it was, because Sean Connery was a nice Irish cop, right? And so they're in this Chicago cathedral, and they're sitting there talking, and Sean Connery's about ready to explain to Kevin Costner the Chicago way. You know, talks about, you know, if they knock one of your guys out, you put one of their guys in the hospital. They put one of your guys in the hospital, you know, you kill one of their guys. If they come at you with a knife and stab you, you come at them with a gun. You know, that's the Chicago way, you know, that he explained in that movie. And this is, to me, it is kind of refreshing. And, you know, that we have a president that's actually doing this. Now, I do think he does go overboard in some of his tweets, but I don't think it's below the decorum of the presidency or the office of the president that he's doing this, because he's fighting back. He's not sitting still and taking this at all with any of these folks. And they're not used to that. They're used to George W. Bush's and John McCain's and Mitt Romney's that they can just steamroll. And here they got a guy, they have a tiger by the tail, and they're afraid to let go because they know it's going to happen if they actually let go. And this is why all this Russian collusion stuff is still out there. This is why they're trying to throw up all this stuff against Donald Trump, because they, whether they know it or not, I think they do, that they got a tiger by the tail, and they just, I'm telling you folks, you let go of that tail, that tiger's going to be able to turn around on you and your lunch. You know, that tiger's going to eat you for lunch, and this is exactly what they have in Donald Trump. So he fights, and they don't get that. They think that these Republicans need to lay down and roll over. And honestly, to a certain extent, I wish Republicans, even though I'm not one, I wish Republicans would get this backbone that Donald Trump has and quit taking the nonsense off the lamestream media. Quit rolling over and start fighting back. You know, Kathleen Conway, you know, she said it was, I think she said, and I watched a couple different interviews and she used different words, but to me, and I'll paraphrase it myself, it's juvenile for the lamestream media, the anti-freedom lamestream media, to be commenting about her looks or that she's a woman instead of dealing with the substance of what she says, and it is. It's schoolyard tactics. It's juvenile in the extreme that they actually do that. She's not letting them get away with it. She holds them to account for that. And I wish other Republicans would do the same thing. They would actually get out there and fight these guys instead of rolling over and letting them control the narrative. The Republicans have the House now, and they have the Senate and have the presidency. They need to stand up and say, the American people voted us in here to do these things, and this is exactly what we're going to do, no matter what you say, no matter what your constituents say to you, or what your constituents say to us in our town halls. Our constituents who voted for us, and we won. And this is the other point. The left out there, the anti-freedom Democrats, the Bernie and Hillary supporters, the anti-Trumpers and stuff like that, they act like they won. They honestly do. They act like they won because that's the way they're acting, and the Republicans are letting them get away with that. If the Republicans would just stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, and tell the lamestream media, you're not going to get away with this anymore. We're going to take you to task for this. And one of the ways they could take them to task for is not show up on some of their programs, like the fake news network that CNN is, and some of these other programs out there. Just not show up on their programs. And if they get comments pointed to them when they're not there on those programs, they have so many different ways to address them. So many different ways to address them. My show would be one of them, that they could address some of these issues with them. And they wouldn't have to be exposed to all this fraudulent, fabricated fake news that's going on in the industry today. It's just, and it still, like I said, folks, it still amazes me that the Republicans haven't got this yet. They haven't learned this lesson yet, that they're in a knife fight, and they need to bring a gun, you know, because That's what I would do. I got a knife, but if there's another guy, I've seen some knife fighters in my day back in the Navy, and there's no way I'd stand toe-to-toe with someone that knows what to do with a knife. I would stand back a little bit with a gun just to protect myself. I don't like being cut. I really don't. I doubt I've never been shot, but I doubt I'd like getting shot either. But these Republicans need to know, and Americans, real Americans need to know that we're in a knife fight with the anti-freedom folks out there, and we need to not take it anymore. We need to stand up to them. We need to have justice. We need to have truth, and we need to have this in all aspects of our lives, including our economic lives and our political lives. We need to have this. We need to stand up to these folks, and we need to actually make sure that they're not getting away with this anymore. Just real quick before I end the show, I have some other articles in there I just want to make you aware of. And some of these I'm going to transfer over to tomorrow's show because I really wanted to talk about. There's a YouTube daredevil who is being fined, and I want to get into that tomorrow, talking about fame and stuff like that. Some of these young people, it's all about getting fame and fortune, and they're really young, and they're really damaging themselves and those around them. This is a good story here. IRS awards Obamacare premium tax credits without verifying citizenship or lawfully present status. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Something, like I said, some of these are going to carry over tomorrow. This one definitely tomorrow. American University president praises successful thought policing on campus. The trampling of the First Amendment of students. Just going up through here. Oh, this is a Mother Jones article. I thought this was funny. Did Trump's EPA chief just say his mission is to dismantle the agency? Well, where were these guys during the election and the primaries running up to the election? Where were these guys? This is one of Donald Trump's big thing about deregulating and putting it back in the hands of the states, getting it out of the federal government's hand. Yeah, I'm glad these guys woke up over Mother Jones. There's some other economic stuff about Blue Apron shares tumble after Amazon files for a meal kit trademark. Healthy competition, folks. Healthy competition going on out there. Venezuela is burning, folks. I mean, it is down. The opposition turns the heat up on Maduro with a call strike. They've had election polls. Donald Trump is talking about if Maduro goes on with his consensus, Congress, about changing the Constitution, that he's going to put even stricter economic sanctions on Venezuela. And it's on and on and on. So they're just some of the things you're going to see in the show notes page today. Some of these are going to carry over tomorrow, so I really want to talk to them. But I had to get this off my chest about this truth, justice, economics, and the American way, because that's what we're all about here is truth, justice, and the American way. So, well, folks, that's the music. I get a little echo back in there if I have the music too loud. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow at noon.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.